This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Back from our long holiday hiatus.
Oh, yeah.
Paul Catalina alongside Royden Ogletree. Royden, how was your holiday?
No, it was awesome. I don't know if you know this now, being a married man. You have to travel a lot now.
Well, I was in Nashville for 10 days.
That is way further than I went, so never mind. I'll shut up.
Yeah. No, you do have to travel. So, yeah, we're actually having our Christmas gift exchange with my mother, who lives here tonight.
Yeah.
Jeez. We've seen her since then, but, you know, it's not been like a formal, hey, let's have a nice dinner. And
Well, yeah, it's like when you have, luckily for me, both my sets of grandparents are still around and her grandparents are still around. So it's like, we're going to do this gift exchange at 3:45 on the dot, and then we're going to get in the car and sprint to the other East Texas town.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, I'm ready to go.
No, we went to Nashville. That's where her family lives. And so we were there. It was good. It was good times. Relaxing. It's the longest, although this year I've taken more stretches because of the honeymoon and everything that went on. But this is the longest we've ever gone without, there's no shows for anybody for 6 straight days, of showtime shows.
How did people cope?
I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be some angry people, but they were off during the holidays, so were we. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what we're going to do. And we didn't have Garrett a bowl game to cover this year.
We didn't, but I think everybody's going to handle it well because we had Mac on Friday, and the reception to that went well. So I think everybody made do with us having a break.
Yeah, we threw some content at them.
Yes,
it just wasn't.
Meanwhile, the comments are like, I haven't been able to survive my family.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks.
We were supposed to have Mac on the Friday before we left, and he was he fell very ill.
Yep.
And so he was really sick. And so he was still, I guess, last Friday, still kind of.
He was getting over it.
He was in the death throes of it.
Oh.
I guess that's the worst term for it. But he was finally winning the battle against whatever bug he caught. Mm-hmm. So it was good that got done. I remember when it popped up, I didn't even know because I was.
Yeah.
Friday was my first full day away, and so we had to leave early because we had some things we had to do, which were not initially planned on. And so Friday, I didn't look at anything. I was in full on help with this, do that. We're gonna go here. This is what's going on. We've got to go to this place and this place, and so So I just got up and rolled.
Yeah. That being said, I was telling you before we started. Just maybe it's not good for this show, but yesterday was yesterday and maybe a few on Saturday were the bowl games that I've watched.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk mostly about the CFP last night. I do have to say something when it comes to travel etiquette. I encountered something.
Ooh, here we go. Great radio topic.
A double whammy that I've never occurred in the same group of people. One of them has, the other one hasn't. But so there was 3 people sitting in front of Amanda and I on our flight to Nashville, which thankfully wasn't full, and we had the middle seat open.
Nice.
Which is lovely. So anyway, it was a mom, a dad, a very small baby, and their grandmother, who I can honestly tell you would win the most likely to have dated Warren G. Harding contest.
She's the oldest person alive?
She was that old. And so there was some sort of problem with their tickets to where the grandmother, so they let the lady take the grandmother onto the plane. Mm-hmm. The lady also brought the baby with her instead of leaving the baby with the husband, which I don't understand. But here's this baby that's, a few months old.
Yeah.
So, and she's trying to get her grandmother, who doesn't quite completely get what's going on, and. You sit here, save these seats. What? So this poor older lady's got to sit there. And so the flight crew for the Southwest flight was very, they understood. They helped out tremendously.
Yeah.
Tremendously. They were great. So anyway, they're the last people on the plane. And the husband gets there, and they sit down. And then for about... I was reading a book, and I was listening to music and kind of relaxing on the flight. But there was this pungent
odor.
Oh no. I couldn't place, but I couldn't I'm looking around. I'm like, what is, and then you start to think oh, is it me? Did I am I
not quite aware of my functions going on?
So then I'm
right
like, no, it's not me. I asked my wife, I'm like, hey, and she's like, yeah, it's like, yeah, it's kind of weird. So then he stands up. And this is when the double breach of etiquette happens.
Okay.
He stands up to get the diaper bag out of the overhead container.
Yeah.
When he does that, I notice that he has taken his shoes off.
Oh.
And it is, I mean, where are you? Where are you? Where are you, sir?
Patton Oswalt had a bit that basically, this may sound derogatory to people that take public transportation, but trust me, it's that a flight is now just a city bus that they strapped a rocket to.
Yeah, and he's right. And so I was just amazed, and it was bad. There's no way that he didn't know. It was, I mean, he's got to know, if you have a foot over problem, you pretty much know. So then they take the diaper bag out, and I thought, oh, well, they're about to take this child to the lavatory and change its diaper, which also is quite smelly. They changed the diaper on the tray table of the middle seat in front of us.
No.
Nope.
Oh, man. Now I'm never using a tray table ever again. I know COVID protocols are that they wipe everything down and they have a hazmat crew come in after.
So when they came for the trash pickup later, they just handed the diaper to the lady, and she was immediately was you saw her do the math in her head, wait a minute, they didn't come back here.
That's supposed to
the diaper is here. So did they? And so then immediately, I'm sure as soon as the plane cleared out, they're like, hey,
hose it down.
15D,
burn it.
Burn it. So I have never look, the feet thing happens all the time. It's a very common thing on planes.
A lot, actually.
Yeah.
The
people
most
put
recent
it up
time
on the armrest
people just
in front
are
of them.
I'm gonna get these piggies out, man. They got to breathe.
Yeah.
And they're just
Yeah. Haven't you guys seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? That was the scene where Dale Griffith is kind of gross. Yeah. He took his shoes off on the plane. Oh, my dogs are barking. All that. That's what it is. All right. So last night, the college football playoff, we had scores of other bowl games. The only one that registers at all is the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and congratulations. Yeah. Every other bowl game needs to learn from the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Now when you have what is a totally meaningless, pointless game, even more so than before, these are totally pointless in a way that you cannot describe anymore. You better make it fun. So congratulations to the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Have sentient mascots that want to die for our sins. This is my body. Take this in remembrance of me.
The throwing the sign out of the as he went into the toaster.
What I want to know, because they had a big edible Pop-Tart at the very end. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. It's the meme of the year at the end of the year, which is an incredible last second heave by Pop-Tarts. But they had an edible mascot come out and they devoured it, and it looked like the Red Skull after, from Marvel.
I saw Two-Face.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Two-Face. But how long was the dude that went down in there in the mascot uniform? How long was he in that fake toaster? Because he went down in and then the Pop-Tart shot out. It's not the same thing, but it's just how long was that guy just kind of in this box?
Does it was there a way
out? Yeah.
A way out where nobody would have seen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all focused on the edible Pop-Tart.
Or did they tell you listen, Dennis, here's what's gonna happen. You are gonna have to stay in here until they clear the field. Mm-hmm. So you can
smoke a cigarette.
You can take the outfit off,
and
sit here in your leotard, but this is what you're gonna be.
Play a game of Sudoku. You're gonna be in there a while, buddy.
What are they just left in an iPad?
Until they wheeled that thing off 3 hours later.
Yeah, he's
trapped in the bottom of the stadium. Still, he's just I'm in here.
He's just watching the whole series of Big Love.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know he had 3 wives. That's crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, but
sentient mascots. Honestly, take a note.
To last night, So we'll start with Alabama and Michigan. And I'm going to say this because you're going to hear it from me through both shows today a lot. Even with Tate Rodemaker at quarterback, FSU could have hung with all 4 of those teams. Now, would they have beaten them? They could have hung. Because I'll point it out. Look, Michigan and Alabama didn't do anything last night that made me think, oh, my God, look at these unbelievable college football teams.
But did FSU do anything to make you seem like they got?
I mean, maybe having one of the better defenses in the country that just chokes people out and didn't give up points all year long. Yes, Royden. Yes, they did.
It was 63-3 at the end of that game, man.
They had 30 opt-outs, man. They had none of their starters. Their third-string quarterback, their third-string running back, their friggin' fourth-string tight end was playing.
They didn't want to be there.
They didn't want to be there. Like, look, did Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Jaheim Bell, Trey Benson, I can go, none of their starting defensive line played. Jared Verse wasn't in the game. No one was in that game. So 63-3, listen, you got to get out of this room with that stuff. This was not the Florida State team that dominated people to a 13-0 record all year long.
I will say I did have a take that I didn't put out there that, the score of that Georgia game didn't discern me at all or dissuade me at all from them actually being in the playoff. I still think that they should have been in the playoff. It just was it ended up being a bloodletting at the end of that game. Well, because
look, the team that would have been in the playoff was not the team that played that game.
Fair.
Was not the team that played that game. So 63-3 is indicative of nothing because the College Football Playoff Committee said, hey, it only matters if one of you plays in this game, and he can't. So
Do you think the general populace knows that though?
No, I don't think that they do. I don't think that they do. I think that they look at the box score and go, "Oh, well, Florida State really didn't beat," But when you have opt-outs and so it's not only that, they had opt-outs and then they had some transfer portal guys. Of those guys would have been better than the true freshmen would have been playing. So there were multitudes. They had 53 scholarship players available. 53 scholarship players available to play against Georgia.
Is that not enough?
Yeah. So just in case you don't know, the number that they're allowed is 85, significantly larger than 53.
Yeah. That was always going to be the problem, though, is that you want these big bowl games to be, but then when you dissuade an undefeated team from being, it's what the hell does this matter anymore?
Well, that's what they did. The College Football Playoff Committee gave Florida State the power to kill the bowl era. That's what they did. They said, all right, well, you just told us that nothing we did matters, and then here's this little consolation prize for everything that we did. Well, no. We're if it doesn't matter to you what we did, well, it doesn't matter to us anymore either. So, a lot of people, there was the whole thing. We had Paxton, one of our viewers, said they should boycott it. Well, that was as close as you come.
Not as close.
I mean,
it would have been better if they just didn't show up.
But they went. Here's the deal. They showed up. Here's what they did. They showed up and got their money, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, pay me this money. Here you go.
Do you think they even took those extra practices seriously?
Yeah, I think so.
Think so?
Yeah, I mean, because you've got guys who are trying to get better for next year, but they also this was staggered the whole time, of all that. But
do you feel better?
No, I don't. I'll never feel better about it. But
I'm just saying right now, it's a little catharsis.
It is a catharsis because I'll tell you, if Florida State is at full roster strength, except for Jordan Travis, which they would have been had they been in the playoff, they could have hung with all those teams. Do they win? I don't know. Games are weird, but Alabama and Michigan didn't do anything last night that made me think that they wouldn't. And Florida State's defense was good enough, if Quinn Ewers is going to play as bad as he did for most of the game last night, that they could have maybe even handled them. Now, Washington is the one that scares you the most because Michael Penix and Rome Odunze and those receivers are just so good that I don't know if there's anything you can do about it. But, there's nothing that made me think that the committee put the best 4 teams in because – if it was really about the best 4 and not the 4 most deserving, then Texas or Alabama shouldn't have been on over Georgia. Then the SEC championship shouldn't have mattered either.
Well, you look at Alabama last night. I mean, they had the lead with a minute left and then spit the bit. But
look, it was about the reason given, Royden. The reason given by the committee that Florida State was not there was because of quarterback play. Correct?
Oh, yeah.
That was the reason.
We wanted to see the best quarterbacks play, but then you had...
What did Jalen Milroe do last night?
I'm not arguing
He threw it for 116 yards. So you're telling me that Tate Rodemaker couldn't have gone and thrown for 116 yards?
Oh, he could have. They were also in Jalen Milroe's lap all night. I'm not quite sure where Florida State's offensive line is compared to... Secretly, Alabama's offensive line, very bad. They gave up 10 more sacks than Baylor, who had like a historically bad.
And I'll tell you, again, when you want to compare with their defense, I mean, they beat the Heisman Trophy winner like a drum.
Yep.
Like a drum. And that offense was at full strength then. So, and their defense was as well. So, there are so many things that, like, the college football, like, the narrative between the people who don't know was like, well, they got it right. No, they didn't. Because, again, if it was about the 4 best, then what Alabama proved last night was that Georgia game was a one-off and that Georgia should have been in there. So if conference title games...
That's the real argument if you want to make it, if you want to go down that Florida State shouldn't have been in there, is that Georgia and Florida State got shafted too.
Yeah. So if it's the 4 best, then conference titles don't really matter, do they? If it's the 4 best, then conference titles don't matter. So then why did
in this iteration, I guess it'll be some in the 12-team iteration too. They'll still have that little like, well, why did the 5th SEC team get in here?
Yeah. So that's where it will be better, but it's still like the reason that Florida State is getting out of the ACC is they also see the writing on the wall is, all right, well, if the Big Ten and the SEC are going to get the benefit of the doubt across the board, then what happens when Clemson is 12-0 and Florida State is 10-2? Well, is Florida State going to get left out for a 9-3 SEC team because, you would
hope in a just world, but we've kind of proven that there is no justice. There's
still a committee. There's still a committee that doesn't have to answer to anybody. That has to answer to no one. That no one has to come out and say anything except their spokesman and the head of the committee. Who that one is Bill Hancock is thankfully retiring. But look, I'm on my rant here, but. God, I mean, it's just nothing that happened last night. And look, I do believe Washington is the best offensive team, like in the 4, clearly.
Well, and they've sneaky probably been the best team all season.
But Washington plays fast and loose. Like if you look at Washington's schedule, okay, they've won 10 consecutive games by 10 points or less. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they play fast and loose all the time. All right, Michigan didn't have a great schedule. This was in my opinion,
it was the hardest opponent they played all year.
Yeah,
Ohio State, but
yeah, but Ohio State got they're not as deep as we thought either. But again, I'm not going to apply the same. I'll apply the same logic. They didn't have their quarterback. Like, what did you think was going to happen with the guy who hasn't played all year against Missouri, who's thrilled to be there? So it's like, again, all these exhibitions they said don't, like these bowl games that aren't the 4 don't matter, right? Or the CFP. So, yeah, there's nothing. There's just nothing. There's nothing that happened last night lets me believe that even if they said the 4 best teams got in, that was true. Because if it doesn't matter anything you've done until the last weekend, then Georgia's whole season didn't matter either. So.
How quickly did you turn that game off, though?
Which game?
The Florida State.
I was traveling, so
okay.
I saw we were coming back, so I saw the first half, and then
I just didn't know how much Schadenfreude you partook in.
It was 42-3 the last play I saw. I didn't see the second half at all. There's no reason to watch at that point.
I'll tell you this. I was walking into a movie because that's what I did instead of watching bowl games because 18,000 movies came out this week, and I walked in and I was like, oh, it's 7 to 6. Okay, cool. And then I walked out and I was like, what the hell happened? It is unbelievable how much a full strength team can go up against 53 scholarship players. But I still do think that Michigan, for as many problems as they have on the offense and moving the ball, that defense last night, their defensive line was just Milroe didn't even have time to think.
Yeah. No, they were fantastic. Yeah. Their defense was fantastic pretty much the whole night. Now, look, Alabama has playmakers to where they're going to get you, and the special teams mistakes.
Always have, yeah.
Yeah, and the special teams mistakes that Michigan made really kept Alabama in it for longer stretches. But
can we get guys that can field punts? Yeah. It happened in both games.
Yeah. And, I thought Alabama was going to win it ultimately because in the second half they had just kind of found the way that Alabama. So Washington won games like that all year where they're in control, they're not in control. All of a sudden it gets kind of messy, but they won. They've won them all. They're 14-0 now. Alabama, that's kind of how they were all season, was like, none of this looks very good, but they're going to find a way to do it. But Michigan just didn't let it in crunch time, especially in overtime. Michigan just didn't let them, and I came away impressed with Michigan's defense. I don't think their offense is really anything special outside of Blake Corum.
Blake Corum's incredible.
Yeah.
I hadn't watched too much of him this year, and then you go and look up his stats, and all of a sudden he's like, he has 1,400 yards and 24 touchdowns.
Yeah,
he's it.
He's just a machine.
He's just it for their offense, kind of. I know they have some playmakers at tight end.
Yeah.
Most Big Ten teams usually do for some reason. But their wide receivers, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and they couldn't get anything going against that secondary. And granted, it might be one of the better secondaries.
Yeah, and their big plays were under, like Roman Wilson underneath had those two big plays, the touchdown to the guy who had 11 catches all year.
Right.
Those are the cool things that happened. But yeah, there was in that Michigan-Alabama game, there was just nothing that said to me like, Georgia and Florida State and maybe a couple other teams like Oregon couldn't have, I know Oregon lost twice, but and they lost to Washington and earned their way in. But you put Oregon against that Michigan team or that Alabama team, I don't think that they're going to veil themselves poorly either. So,
so all that being said, you're taking Washington.
I probably will. To me, it comes down to the best quarterback in the game, and that is very clearly Michael Penix. He is, holy cow.
He has, just watching it last night, and I did watch a lot of Washington football this year, and this is just not the same guy that was at Indiana.
Yeah.
Granted, the offensive system and the playmakers on the outside helped that a lot, but he all of a sudden, when RG3 came back and from the knee injury, and he had to sit in the pocket a little bit more and just flick those deep balls down the field. He has the best deep ball that I think I've seen since RG3.
It's fantastic, and he
it's on them every single time. And granted, Roman Odunze's bending over backwards to catch it over his shoulder. He's incredible, but it's on them every single time, and the ball jumps off of his hand. Also navigating the pocket, which college quarterbacks don't usually have to do. He was navigating the pocket against that Texas front, and just picking that secondary, which is pretty poor apart. But yeah,
19 of 20 on targets to the wide receivers last night. 19 of 20 on targets to the wide receivers last night. That's how good he was, and that's how bad that secondary was. It is something else. We're going to take a break right here. When we come back, I want to dive more into Washington and Texas and how Kalen DeBoer, the coach of the year, almost had to give it back in the last minute of that game last night. That was maybe not his best work, but they still got it done, which is maybe why you're coach of the year, is that you've coached a team well enough to that when you have a 90-second long brain fart, when they know they have to make a play, they do. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Yeah, it is the day after the college football playoff, and that's a weird open. And I just had a thought about, my rant the last time around. And maybe I should have dialed it back. No, I'm not going to dial it back. I'm going to stand on this forever because now I've looped Georgia into this. I'm pro Georgia all of a sudden that
It's bad when the college football committee can get you to root for Darth Vader.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, nothing that they said makes any sense based on it's about the 4 best. Well, so that's just the arbitrary thing of we are going to put these 4 teams in. And I even wonder because Washington's conference is, well, they're going to the Big Ten, so they're fine. They have that other badge. But like, had it been Oregon State that won the Pac-12 and they're 13-0, would they have been like, well, your conference is falling apart and nobody wants you, so you're not good either. So we will put Georgia in. It'll be Georgia and Alabama and Texas, and then 2 Power 5. Like it's like if you
We don't like your brand, which is weird to say about Florida State, who's been like a historic team.
Yes.
All said, but like,
yeah, and
I get where you're coming from.
which is why like there are other schools in the ACC that have not been as public as Florida State has been about leaving, but are thrilled to watch what happens and how Florida State figures this out because they're also historic programs that know they won't get the benefit of the doubt because, they had a bad conference commissioner a couple commissioners ago. Well, look, I don't want to knock Jim Phillips too much because I think he's done a mostly good job with the ACC, except he's got 2 huge missteps. One of them would be the alliance, which he got completely, wool pulled over his eyes by Kevin Warren. Like, oh, yeah, no, we're going to slow this down, which is one of the reasons that there's not a 12-team playoff this year.
Right.
And the other thing is when Greg Sankey spent every waking moment going on ESPN and going, listen, it's one of these things is not like the other. There's SEC is better. It's different. Let's just pretend. He was talking about the ACC and he was talking about FSU, and which was like, again, in the eye of the beholder in his job. So he went out and did that. And at no point did Jim Phillips go, should I get on? Should I make a case for my conference? You know what? Who has the time?
Does this play about us?
Yeah. Yes.
Are they talking about us?
Yeah. I mean, at no point did he go, I can't help but notice that this was a very pointed discussion.
Greg, what do you mean, man?
Yeah. At no point did he do that. He just woke up Sunday morning and was like, all right, well,
That sucks anyway.
I guess I'll get to go to Pasadena, New Orleans. That's always fun.
Where's my morning coffee? Oh, they're talking about us in the papers. Because he probably still reads it.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. Let's turn on ESPN and see what happened. Oh, look. Oh, shucks. Oh, darn it. Oh, man. Oh, well, I guess I've got to write a strongly worded statement that won't mean anything now.
Yeah.
So,
How's Duke basketball doing?
yeah, it's basketball season now in the ACC. All right, Washington and Texas was a fantastic game. Washington was in control pretty much most of it. Like the muff punt
Definitely
let Texas
most of
get
the
back
second
in.
half,
Yeah, most of the
yeah.
second half. The muff punt allowed Texas to get back in it in a way that had they just punted the ball back the other way, I don't know if Texas, especially the way that they were playing at that point, was going to, because Washington to kind of figure them out. Quinn Ewers did not play well to his capability until the fourth quarter. In the third quarter, he was terrible. I mean, just
Missing wide receivers dropping balls.
yeah, it was a really sloppy third quarter, but Washington did not, stand on their neck, didn't do that. And at the end of the game, Kalen DeBoer did 2 things that
You're going to have to, describe this for the audience and me because I was actually in the middle of producing a show when the whole 1 minute drill went down.
when they kicked their field goal to go up by 9,
Right.
37-28. So when they kicked that field goal, they on third down, they threw a really ill-advised pass. Just he threw it away, and it felt to me in that moment.
And they had
when
90 seconds left after
yeah,
he threw
and
that
they
ball
got
away.
when they got to the 10-yard line on the long pass that they made. When they got there, Garrett, well, you were asleep too, weren't you?
I was asleep.
You were asleep.
I passed out, bro.
When it got there, it felt to me like they they were just going to play for the field goal because in their heads, they're like, look, if we have a 2-score lead, like this, we're going to be fine here. Texas did have 2 timeouts, but like, we're going to be fine. We're going to be all right. And so they kick the field goal and they're up by 9. So then, but they threw that pass, which if they run the ball, Texas would have had to take one of their timeouts there. So they didn't save Texas a timeout and at least 40 seconds, right? So they saved them 40 seconds there. So then they kick off. Texas gets the ball back, goes down and kicks a field goal. And then they recover the onside kick. So then they have the ball back here. And there is, at this point, a minute or so left. And instead of I get the strategy of trying to get the first down, because if you get a first down, they have 2 timeouts in the game.
Yeah.
Because they're going to call timeout on first and second down. So they ran 2 plays on first and second down. They got, they got positive yards, but it wasn't to where, they were still in if it was a normal third down at any other point in the game, they'd have been throwing for sure.
Right.
Especially against a Texas run defense that is the best in the country.
Yeah.
So
they couldn't get anything going all night.
So then at that point, because you can now, like they don't have any timeouts left, you should take a knee because the most important thing is they don't have enough time to do anything. Mm-hmm. So they ran another play, and Dylan Johnson, who was already playing banged up, got hurt. The clock stops until the punt of the snap. So again, there's 40 more seconds they could have taken off the clock that Texas wouldn't have had. So at this point, they punt back down to Texas, and they're everybody's cashed at this point in the game. And so then it comes down to your defense, which is not the strength of your team, now has to stop an offense that has new life because you gave them enough time to go down and
also playing prevent defenses and stuff. For some reason, I don't think coaches have figured out in my entire lifetime. I get that you don't want anybody behind you, but my entire life, all of these coaches have always been playing prevent defenses down, and you're just allowing them to pick you apart all the way down the field and to give them a shot at the end zone. I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that. I understand you don't want to get anybody like in man coverage get blown by like on the outside. But the prevent defense always seems to me that it doesn't prevent anything until the last second.
No, and look, they had to make Texas again. Royden, I don't even remember this, but it was one of Colt McCoy's more famous plays. But they beat Nebraska.
Oh yeah.
In the Big 12 title game when Colt McCoy heaved a ball out of bounds and the clock stopped with 1 second left. Quinn Ewers did that again last night. Like they throw the ball, it's going out of bounds, and then sure enough,
1 untimed or
1 second, essentially,
an untimed down.
It's an untimed, like 1 second is an untimed.
Yeah,
like you can only have that one thing. But they made the play when they had to. And like that defense, I was impressed with Garrett, I'm sure you've seen the highlight by now.
Oh, at the end of the game?
Yeah, at the end of the game.
Yeah.
The way he swatted that ball away was emphatic, and I was very impressed with. It was like a Hakeem Olajuwon block of get that out of here. So I was very impressed. I was very, very impressed.
People are like, this is how you need to teach cornerbacks how to get rid of the ball. Like, don't bat it up in the air. Don't do it just out of bounds. Just throw it 30 yards into the stands.
Yeah. So
what do we think about, I know I said earlier that I think that Washington has secretly kind of been the best team all year. And granted, they played a lot of those 10-point games, 1-score games. Some people would say, well, that's what winning is made out of. You know what I mean? You've actually overcome and won those games. So I have a lot of respect for them, and they clearly have, no disrespect to Jaden Daniels, probably the best quarterback that's played this year.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels had to be Superman all year because of that defense. But just the way that I've pinpoint how good Michael Penix is with all of his throws is incredible. What I want to talk about is Texas, and obviously their secondary is going to have to do some growing up. They're going to lose a lot on the defensive line, and they're going to go into the SEC, which, not for nothing, it's probably going to be harder competition than what they face in the Big 12 this year.
Yeah.
is this repeatable, or does Quinn Ewers have to, like, can he have like this sort of, calling him a game manager feels reductive, but at points it's just like, get the ball to your playmakers sort of thing.
Yeah.
He definitely has to take another leap for them to get back to this point.
I think we've seen that he will. Because I think he's coming back. But
he said he's already coming back.
Yeah, I mean, like he still reserves the right until he's got 13 days to make the.
Did you see
decision.
the photo of the press that surrounded Arch Manning instead of talking to Quinn Ewers? Did you see that going around?
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, so I think there are. Oh wow!
So that is me.
That was you. Hold on, I was trying to get to. We have a super chat that I was trying to get to, and I'll get to that in a second. I think that it's I think it's repeatable because I think that I have faith in Steve Sarkisian's roster building, that he's got the right idea. I mean, they've built an SEC roster. The problem is that it might not be right away. Like they might see a little bit of a dip because they're going to lose a sixth-year senior at right tackle. They're going to lose another guy on the offensive line. There's no way that Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell and Jatavian Sanders are going to be back. They're all going to be in the draft. Now, they'll have their running backs back. They'll have Quinn Ewers back. They've already got Matthew Golden. They've already made some transfer portal moves. So that will all that will be replaced. Like Jordan Whittington's leaving too, and that's a veteran presence who made a big play last night. Somebody you can rely on for a lot of things. So they'll have all of that back, but Javondre Sweat will be in the NFL. He's got some Gilbert Brown vibes. Ted Washington, Gilbert Brown, Vince Wilfork vibes going on there.
Huge.
I like, as one of the world's most well-known Texas haters, I do kind of love Javondre Sweat.
Oh, you got to.
Yeah, I do kind of love Javondre Sweat. And I love Byron Murphy. Like, both those guys will be in the NFL.
Yeah.
Jalen Ford will be in the NFL. The secondary can be wherever they want to be.
Come back or don't.
Yeah, they've got to work on that. But I also think like the secondary was kind of their problem all year. But you never ran up against Michael Penix and Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan.
No.
And I mean, because you're not you're not going to, because there's only one of those.
Yeah.
Like, maybe two. Like, I think that, like, and part of the reason I think, had, like, if we're going to really do revisionist history, let's go back and Inglorious Bastards this thing. And Jordan Travis's leg never got broken.
Right.
I do think that Texas versus Florida State would have been a really great matchup at full strength, because I think the only comparable group of quarterback wide receivers would have been FSU with Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and those guys.
I think Oregon might have had a good chance. Granted, with the playmakers that they had outside, I still think Bo Nix is a step below those two guys that you mentioned, Penix and Travis. But yeah, I mean, granted, the way he played against Liberty make you think that he's the best quarterback that's ever played. But I just maybe Oregon would have given it a shot. But yeah, the amount of just dudes that they had to throw at Texas all night. It's like watching a ritual sacrifice down the middle of the field. They couldn't stay with those guys.
Yeah. I absolutely think this was nothing they could have, because again, in their Big 12 schedule, even Alabama, because when they played Alabama, Milroe was still trying to find him. He got benched right after that,
Yeah.
Alabama kind of showed last night that they've got guys like Bond and Burton that are good, but they're not Devontae Smith, and they're not Julio Jones, and they're not Amari Cooper, some of these super studs they've thrown into the league the last few years. So,
and also Alabama's secondary at the time, people forget, like, Saban had to light a fire under them to get them to play up to their potential. Now all of a sudden down the final stretch of the season, they played up to their 5-star potential and were, by all accounts, one of the best secondaries coming into the playoffs. Or into bowl season, but that secondary wasn't the same secondary when they played Texas. Quinn Ewers was burning them down the field in that game.
Yeah.
For some reason, he couldn't quite do it until the second half of this game. But I don't know what that was about.
I think the pass rush, Braylon Trice for Washington, we haven't mentioned his name yet, but I thought Braylon Trice had he's an NFL player.
Right.
He had a fantastic game, and he led it, they rushed for most of the night and were disruptive enough with Quinn Ewers, and then it just drops and fumbles and the other thing that happened.
Things that a team needs to do some growing up to get over that hump.
Yeah. The other thing that happened last night to Texas that usually doesn't happen with them was they the officiating was way out of I don't want to say bad. I don't think it was bad, but they Washington got every break on every call. Michael Penix threw a ball where everything but his right shoulder was across the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
I'm well, it's got to be your whole body. I'm like, man, okay. I mean,
he was about 2 yards past the line.
He just. I guess they couldn't tell. I thought that was bad. There were. I'm forgetting a couple other things that went their way that could have gone either way. But when that swung back to Texas, it didn't happen. There was a very clear block in the back on one play that because the play was already over, they didn't call. But it was they threw a flag and then the other official talked him out of it and. So those things.
They also got a little bit they volleyballed a ball at the line of scrimmage and the guy ran under it a Kendall Wright. Some breaks didn't go their way.
Yeah, the breaks didn't go their way. The other thing that happened to them was happened to Alabama yesterday too. Alabama was their own worst enemy most of the year with the penalties and the little things. Texas had a ton of false starts and stupid little penalties that'll kill you. And so they had a couple times where they had 2nd and 5 and then boom, it's 2nd and 10. Well, if Ewers isn't, on fire, if he's not hitting the strike zone on every throw, then that's not good because now you're you're taking out a running game. I also think that Sarkisian, in trying to get Ewers going, abandoned the run when it was working better. But that's neither here nor there because they had a chance to win the game.
It's kind of been their Achilles heel all year is that Sark still loves those shots down the field, even if they're not hitting. He's still going to go to Ewers. Several times to try and get those deep balls. And early on, especially when they had more chances to keep up, and granted they went into the halftime tied, but when they had more chances to kind of keep up, they were just dropping those passes, and it just wasn't working.
I thought the best thing that Washington did defensively all night, other than Braylon Trice and how great he played, was that Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy were not factors until late. And nobody did that all year long. Nobody did. You may have one that didn't have as many catches as the other, but having both of them not really be major factors in the game for a good chunk of it is why Washington, I think, won. If one of them gets hot at any point during the game before that fourth quarter, when it was too late to do anything, I guess, but when it was too late to kind of rally and take the lead and kind of control the fourth quarter. That's why I think Washington really pulled away with it last night because, Worthy and Mitchell have been great. And Sanders was they're all factors in the game at certain points, but not to the level they had been throughout the Big 12 schedule.
Speaking of Washington, and I know we'll probably talk about the actual championship in the next block, but them settling for those field goals 3 in a row, you cannot do that against Michigan. And I know that you were down on Michigan in the last segment or whatever, but that's the game that they want to play.
Yeah.
They want you to take the points or whatever.
Yeah.
There were several times where they could have just stepped on Texas's throat and got up 17 points. And they never could get the 4th and 1, 4th and 2. And granted, that's because Texas' defensive line is unbelievable, and they were for some reason running right at them. But that happened several times in the red zone.
I agree with you. I think that if they want to beat Michigan, that they're going to have that 37. Michigan doesn't have 37 points in them. That's not what they do. So get to your 35 points however you can, and then that gives your defense, which is again we've just stated, a little vulnerable, a lot better chance to dare Michigan to have to throw the ball to beat you. The prodigal heel, $5 super chat, and thank you. These bowl games look horrible. However, I think the two best teams are playing for the title. I agree with that. I think the two best teams who are playing the best ball right now. Are in that. So yeah, I think so.
Granted, in injuries and everything, I would still think that Georgia would give both these teams a run for their money.
The two most consistent teams are certainly.
Yeah, because Georgia at points struggled with South Carolina. I know they blew them out, but points struggled with South Carolina and struggled with some of these lower teams in the SEC when they couldn't quite get Carson Beck moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And granted, he came out and threw 30 touchdowns. So what do I know? But I just think that you don't drop that game to Alabama. It's a completely different story. But I think the two teams that have just sort of weathered the storm the entire year are playing in And that's really all it takes sometimes. It's just to like be healthy.
Yeah.
Be healthy at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, let's look ahead to Washington versus Michigan. This is 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome back to the Triple Option. Paul Catalina, Royden Ogletree. Michigan versus Washington for the national championship. This is two teams.
One everyone was looking forward to.
This is two teams that haven't won a national title since the early 90s. Or I guess the Michigan would be in the late 90s, but since the 90s. So, while they are, in the country club.
Was Washington there in like 2001?
They didn't win.
Yeah, okay. I just remember when the last time that they were even
No, like
around.
they won in 92 or 3. They shared the title with Miami.
Yeah.
So Washington's won. They won under Don James back in the day. So they've won. And
Historic football program, Washington.
They're like most of the Pac-12, like the glory days were behind them.
Yeah.
Right? And then Washington and Oregon, of the later ones, have been the ones who've been the most consistent throughout, even so much more than USC, who's the one who clearly was even still driving the bus. Like USC and Texas, after that 05 went on like different like paths of slowly deteriorating and not being good again.
Self-destruction.
Yeah. USC maybe even worse than Texas.
Nobody wants to talk about that because I think they're just on the West Coast, and anything like in the West Coast and college football tends to get ignored unless you're like
really, really good.
Yeah, unless you're Reggie Bush. But like I just the demise of USC football has been really interesting to watch, but everybody makes fun of Texas for just similar results.
I'll tell you what happened, which overlapped. Texas had one really bad athletic director in Steve Patterson after the guy DeLoss Dodds, who is the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
He's the GOAT of athletic directors. There's no doubt. DeLoss Dodds, best. They should name the award after him, DeLoss Dodds Award. He innovated the position. USC had a cavalcade of guys who were like ex-players. They're like, Lynn Swann and Mike Garrett and Pat Hayden, like all these guys can be our AD because they're really smart dudes and they were great.
They played football.
Yeah, but none of them were athletic directors.
Yeah.
And then they hired Mike Bone, who did a couple things that made it good, but apparently Mike Bone is terrible. Like just horrible to work for, thinks it's 1955 and you can just say anything to anybody without, consequences.
You can't do that?
So, yeah, bad athletic directors, man. Look, to be successful in the long term in college athletics, you need one thing. It is a president, an athletic director, and a coach that have complete alignment.
Yeah, all in lockstep.
The minute that happens, you're going to have struggles until you repair that.
Right.
It's the only way to have consistent success is president, athletic director. And here's the deal. It's the only way to have academic success, I'm sure, as well. Like your departments all around the school are going to be bad if the deans of all the departments don't support the president, right? Just like, the or at least are not don't have at least some sort of shared vision for where you want to go.
Yeah.
Like nobody needs to have groupthink. That's not a good thing, but you have to have that spine. So
anyway, Michigan and Washington.
yeah. Michigan versus Washington. I'm leaning towards Washington, although Michigan just kind of grinds you into dust, right? And
That old school football, it's so bad to watch too.
But they have not, Michigan, still to this point, has not seen a quarterback all year like the one they're going to see.
No.
Not at all.
The best one that they had was at Ohio State, and he transferred. So, because they didn't want him anymore.
Yeah. I mean, Jalen Milroe played a lot like he did early in the season in that game. They did a good job. They didn't let him get loose. And Garrett and I talked about it before the break. I did a top 5 about it. And I thought that Milroe, I knew it wasn't going to be pretty. Alabama doesn't win pretty. But I was almost dead right in that, where Milroe's going to get you is not against a defense like Michigan. He's not going to have 180 yards rushing, but he might have 50 yards of rushing that are at the right time because he makes it up and just improvises. They didn't let him do that all night last night.
Yeah, and there was a couple times where he's like, oh, there's a hole in the middle open, and he gashed them once or twice, and I was like, okay, we're getting something. And then it just
But they sacked him. They sacked him 7 times last night, something like that.
In the first
half it was 5.
Yeah, in the first 3 plays, he was sacked 3 times.
Yeah, they were just all over him all night long. So yeah, Michigan's defensive line was really good last night, and they won the game in the trenches. I think that they're going to be stronger in that regard than Washington, but Washington's offensive line. Golly, last night did a great job against a defensive line that I think is better than Michigan's in Texas.
I don't know how many sacks they give, but they kept him clean, and that also comes with a quarterback that knows how to navigate the pocket. Like I was saying last block, Penix actually steps up and moves around and makes those decisions that you want NFL quarterbacks to do, because instead of just okay, the pocket's collapsing, so I'm going to run right.
Yeah.
It's step right, step left, throw the ball down the field. And he actually does that.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, what's his sort of draft stock looking like, because, maybe he'll be a project or he was hurt and yada, yada, yada. He just makes reads, actually. And I know the Washington offense is a spread offense. You make the one read, throw it down the field. But when they were in his grill or coming around the outside and him feeling the pressure and stepping up in the pocket, he did that better than any quarterback that I've seen do all year.
Yeah, he was fantastic. And because of his injuries, he ran a couple times, zone reads, and picked up big first downs, but he's not
the same.
He's not going to be the guy who's going to run around. He's torn his ACL twice, or maybe he's torn both of them. But yeah, he was fantastic. And so that's where I think that's where Michigan is going to have obviously, because that's where everybody does, is that here's the other thing is Washington can play very mediocre throughout a whole game. And then all
Score
it takes
20 points. Yeah.
All it takes is 3 completions to Rome Odunze, and then they're on. Mm-hmm. The one he threw last night to go over 400 yards over towards the sideline was one of the most beautiful passes I've ever seen anybody throw. It was perfect. Odunze just turns around and just on him. He just threw darts last night. Look, the one ball that was tipped for a touchdown, I think Jalen Polk tipped it to himself. He just tipped it to himself and scored. And yeah, and that was a frozen. He just throws frozen ropes.
The one, I keep going back to the Roman Dunze over the shoulder catch down the middle of the field for 45 yards. But there was one, and I forget who caught it. I think it was their third best receiver who had been hurt. McMillan, yeah. He threw, it was just a corner breaking route, and he was wide open, and he threw probably the straightest ball I've ever seen in my entire life for that touchdown. I think it was his second touchdown that he threw, and it looked like a rocket shot out of his arm. Yeah. And I was I didn't know he had that kind of arm strength. And maybe that's a lefty quarterback bias for me, because it's you watch Tua Tagovailoa throw ducks down the middle of the field, but Penix, it just jumps off of his arm, man. It's unreal to see. What I'm interested to see is Michigan doesn't have the playmakers on the outside that Texas does. And like we were saying, mostly that they were a non-factor all game for Texas. What are these guys from Michigan going to do? Or can Washington play the same brand and lock them down even more? Obviously, you have to worry about Blake Corum, and he's going to probably get his. But I'm just interested to see if Michigan can get anything going. And look, I'm not I've never been impressed with J.J. McCarthy. I know a lot of people are, and a lot of people think that he's like a pro quarterback. Little undersized. I'm not. Just some of the stinkers that I've seen him put up this year, where it's like, and a lot of that is game script, but 11 for 28 for like 115 yards, and you're just like, I don't see it.
Well, look,
maybe I'm blind.
The stat that they throw about J.J. McCarthy, and he's like,
he wins.
What I like about him is he's a gamer.
Yeah,
but he's not and maybe in a different offense than Jim Harbaugh and Sharon Moore, who are not trying to like light it up.
Yeah.
Necessarily, like he would probably have more prolific stats. But the stat that's been very telling is pre-Connor Stallions, he threw like 20 touchdown passes. Post-Connor Stallions, he threw 1. So, I don't know if one has anything to do with the other. Sometimes the game dictates that. Like also those 3 games, the Harbaugh didn't coach any of those games, Penn State and Ohio State, and Sharon Moore was double duty, and so they didn't throw, like he got banged up in the Penn State game. They didn't throw a pass in the second half and still won that game without much stress.
That was the grossest game I've ever watched.
So Ohio State, he didn't have to carve anybody up.
And I'll say there's Michigan fans, if you're watching, you're like, well, he threw 3 touchdowns last night. I'm just, I don't know. I don't know. I have no other argument other than
he's not a wow quarterback, but he's a gamer, which you can win with. That's what I like about J.J. McCarthy. He's a gamer for sure. Michael Penix is right now in a wow phase. Like, he's in like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing right now? Wow. Well, Royden, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Good.
It's been a good time.
Got here to be yelled at about Florida State.
Yeah, listen, you came with a take of like, well, they lost 63-3. Like, that's not the same team. That's not even like, here's the thing. It's not even the spring roster. It was less than the spring roster.
Hey, we're yelling.
Yeah. Which is
we'll
why,
be fine.
Which is look, they exposed the problem in the bowl system. They've got to find a way to make it better. So
I need a thesis about this to be submitted to the nearest university. Baylor, I think, is the nearest one.
Look, I think the way that you keep people there is you have all these money running through the bowl games. You got to pay the players.
Yeah,
you got to essentially
they get a cut.
Yeah, they're gonna have to get a cut, and if you do that, then a lot of them will stay because
And like the NBA in-season tournament, all of a sudden they're like, "We're going to pay you $500,000,000," and they're like, "Yeah, okay, I'm in."
Also, and I don't agree with most of the things that Kirk Herbstreit says anymore, but he did make a good point that they need to raise it above 6-6, like 7-5 or 8-4 needs to be the bowl criteria, and they need to maybe
cut some of these,
cut some of these bowls.
Yeah,
just nobody's going to the Bahamas Bowl. Let's just get rid of these other ones. Let's keep the ones that are good. Let's keep the Pop-Tarts Bowl and the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl and the ones that matter, but let's not just do bowls to have bowls.
Meineke Car Care Bowl.
Yeah.
Out.
So if you pay and you do well and people go to the game and it makes sense, then do it. But I think that we've kind of seen especially now with all the other rules, you can't judge a team, you couldn't judge hardly any team from their bowl season because of the rosters just aren't the same.
No, I mean, it was bad I said I didn't watch, but the few that I did watch, I'm like, this is just bad football.
I'm not judging Ohio State for what happened against Missouri. Dude, Kyle McCord, they were happy to let him walk and still don't know what their plan B is. Maybe Ryan Day knows and no one else, but the quarterbacks are drying up now. So
I call the kid from UNLV.
Yeah, that might be who they get. Who knows? But yeah, there are I'm not going to begrudge them that because look, they didn't want Devin Brown to be the starter anyway, and then he had to be. And while he might wind up being better than that one day, it's still the first time he's playing. And Mizzou, they didn't have any of that problem. So every team's in a different spot depending on what's gone down in December. I thought for sure that we were going to see Austin Novosad make his first start, but Bo Nix was like, nah, I think I'll go stick it to Liberty. Bucky Irving's playing. Troy Franklin's playing. Hell, I'll go.
Brother out there throwing the dimes too. I didn't even know that was a story.
Yeah.
The Tez Walker or whatever, the receiver.
Yeah. So, all that. So, All right.
Just give me good football. I just want good football.
Yeah. Steven Simcox will join us tomorrow. We'll talk probably more a little Michigan and Washington. We'll also talk what's gone on, what we've missed. By the way, welcome to Tallahassee, DJ Uyunglele.
Hey.
I cannot wait for him to beat Clemson. Just can't wait.
It's going to happen, too.
But, yeah, and Cam Ward off to the NFL.
Really?
So, yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, Cam Ward, well
that's what Ohio State was banking on.
So here's what he didn't even visit there. He visited Miami and FSU, and then it came down to, here was the news, how it came out on Cam Ward. He is down to Miami and the NFL, which actually means he was down to the NFL. Because right now, are you like, Miami's going after Malachi Nelson, and that might wind up working out well for them.
Maybe,
but I do have a question on Malachi Nelson. The offensive coaches that you have at USC are Lincoln Riley and Cliff Kingsbury.
Mm-hmm. No, I think they're pretty good.
Who, between them, have coached Johnny Manziel, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, and Jalen Hurts.
And
Caleb Williams.
And Patrick Mahomes. And the coaches at Miami are Mario Cristobal and Shannon Dawson. And Mario Cristobal coached Justin Herbert to 5 picks lower in the draft than he would have been. So, I don't know what you're thinking. Money.
I get, but like, if you're good at USC, you're gonna make money.
That's probably true.
And that's been true forever.
Yeah. It's been true since like the 30s.
Yeah. You're telling me Marcus Allen didn't do okay when he was in college? Please. All right, that's going to do it for us. Steven Simcox is with us tomorrow. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact